Who is Mrs. Flood?
The Rani!
Time Lord that Mrs. Flood could be. The Rani.
Mrs. Flood.
The Rani.
What if Mrs. Flood is actually going to turn out to be the Rani?
Is it the Rani?
It's the Rani. I want the Rani.
So I'm suggesting that she's the Rani.
Who the hell is Mrs. Flood?
I have my suspicions on who Mrs. Flood is.
Abzorbaloff. Abzorbaloff, yeah.
Okay, putting the Rani aside for just a second, you might think I'm kidding here, but Mrs. Flood could be our favourite green guy from the planet Clom. Since we know the Abzorbaloff can disguise themselves as a human, we know Mrs. Flood loves Clom, and they're both great runners.
I did a fun run last Easter in 25 minutes flat.
Honestly, I actually think this holds some weight to it. Where are all those videos? Come on, internet. Abzorbaloff, Flood, absorb water. Yeah, I could do this all day. Anyway, it goes without saying that everyone in the Doctor Who fandom has been trying to work out who the mysterious Mrs. Flood could possibly be. And for the first time in modern Who, we might actually, just maybe, be seeing the return of the villainous Time Lord, the Rani. Admittedly, I was ready to throw the script in the bin when I realised just how many YouTubers had already made Mrs. Flood content, until I stumbled on this video in particular. I was inspired. The music, the simplicity, the tantalising transitions. Somebody made a YouTube channel called Mrs. Flood is the Rani just so they could make this one video. If that's not dedication, I don't know what is. And if they can be that dedicated to Mrs. Flood, then goddammit, so can I. We must be a good minute or so into this video by now. And so far I've shown you other videos you could be watching, told you Mrs. Flood is actually the Abzorbaloff, and hyped up a 59-second video I watched at 3 AM on a Friday morning, 4 hours for a 43-minute drive to work. Which is a pretty good indication that I should probably start the video. But wait, why is this video going to be different to all the others, I hear you say? Because I've scraped the absolute bottom of the barrel of reasons why Mrs. Flood is totally, completely and utterly the Rani. And not, probably not, the Abzorbaloff. Just for you. So buckle up, because we are in for a stormy ride. Let me start by telling you who the Rani is, based entirely off of her first appearance alone, in Mark the Rani. She's just a benevolent lady living in the 1800s working at a bathhouse. She's evidently human and totally not evil.
Thank you, not evil, Mr. Munchkins man.
See?
Just fair war out.
What? She is actually not just a nice neighbourly lady, but is actually an evil Time Lord chemist who has been making the locals act violent and turning them into sentient trees.
I am secretly evils, Mr. Munchkins man.
Now obviously the fact that both Mrs. Flood and the Rani are both pretending to be normal humans on Earth having a secret dark side isn't damning evidence that they are the same person. She could just as easily be the meddling monk, who also did the Time Lord living on Earth pretending to be benevolent until we learn that they actually have an evil intentions shtick, or just a new villain following the same formula. We do learn, thanks to the Master, who is also in this story, that the Rani already rules a planet and experiments on aliens. However, remember how the Meep's planet's sun turned its inhabitants violent? Hence why the Meep is evil? Well, and stay with me here, what if the Rani, or should I say Mrs. Flood, was the one who caused the sun to turn psychedelic in the first place? Then, following this, she became the ruler of the planet, hence she is also the boss that the Meep refers to.
Just wait till I tell the boss.
Maybe she had similar plans to take control of Earth, which is why Mrs. Flood says,
I had such plans.
Then again, maybe Mrs. Flood just wanted to run for Prime Minister, and that doesn't sound like an evil Time Lord activity to me.
The Master is Prime Minister of Great Britain.
Whether purely coincidental, a red herring, Marge, or bang on the money, you can't deny that the similarities are there, and I've seen others bring up the same point, so I can't be crazy, or maybe we're all crazy. One last thing I'd like to point out about Mark, of the Rani, is that she is working in a bath house. Bath house. Bath. What happens to a bath when it overflows? It floods. If you listen carefully, you can actually hear me scraping in the bottom of the barrel. Moving on. Time and the Rani, often regarded as the greatest story of all time. Beginning with Sylvester McCoy's 6th Doctor, regenerating to Sylvester McCoy's 7th Doctor. Yes, that is Sylvester, not Colin, you can Google why later. after a tragically fatal incident involving a cardiovascular ergometer. He fell off an exercise bike. Yes, I know Big Finish corrected this, but since when did I care about extended media? Anyway, unluckily for the Doctor and his companion Mel, they have a crash landing, and you'd never guess who finds them. That's right, the planet Time from the Jodie Whittaker episode No It's the Rani. She kidnaps the newly regenerated Doctor, leaving Mel behind, and this is where things start to get weird. Like they weren't weird already. So, back at the Rani's base, the Doctor wakes up and is shocked to find the Rani, clearly having not read the title of the episode. To get a short story even shorter, the Rani injects him with amnesia, and goes full Robbie Rotten and dresses up like Mel.
Perfect.
Don't ask me where she got the outfit, I don't want to know. Anyway, this is enough to trick Seven into helping her evil scheme. This is literally just lazy time.
Yeah, Sporticus, we always listen to you. Yeah.
Don't you ever forget it.
The story goes on, but let's stop here for a moment to unpack a few things. Like the drip. Mrs. Flood, if you aren't aware, has been consistently wearing different outfits throughout the season worn by previous companions, like Rory, Romana, Adric, and Clara. One of those might be wrong. Similar to how the Rani dresses up as Mel. What's more is that Mel is actually back in Doctor Who at the moment. This could be a setup for a reunion between her and the Rani. And then again, Mel also went up against the Valeyard.
The Valeyard is an amalgamation of the darker sides of your nature, somewhere between your 12th and final incarnation.
Another potential candidate for Mrs. Flood's secret identity. So yet again, this is not damning evidence. Returning to Time the Rani, there is no further evidence that Rani is Mrs. Flood. Until part 4. After she fails to use her big brain to defeat the Doctor. No, really, she has a big brain. She plugs these people into this brain. I swear, I'm not making this up. See?
Gentlemen, such austerity, remember, blessed are the pie makers, for they shall make light pastry.
She more or less attempts to blow up her big brain in a last-ditch attempt to stop the Doctor. However, during the countdown, because of course there's a countdown, the countdown gets stuck on a particular number. What number? The number 4. That's right. 4. And if we look closely at where Mrs. Flood lives, that's right, number 4. Okay, maybe it is just a coincidence. It is just a single-digit number. Weird though, right? But that number doesn't come up again. Before I go any further, I just want to thank you for making it this far into the video. I must have rewrote the script 3 or 4 times, so honestly, I really do appreciate you making it this far. This is kind of a follow-on from my last video, which had a Mrs. Flood section in it. The video I'm working on currently is all about the other people I think Mrs. Flood could be, and I'm quite excited to record that one. So you might want to consider subscribing if you want to see that video. Or don't, that's fine too. Honestly, it probably won't really be that good. Either way, I just wanted to take a breather before we dive into the last section of the video, because things are somehow going to get even weirder. Because the Rani's last appearance was in the infamous Children in Need special, Dimensions in Time. So we begin with the Deal or No Deal guy, having a lovely little chat with the Third Doctor, completely and utterly breaking the fourth wall.
I've seen you in the year 2010.
Oh.
You're still on television.
Am I? Oh, am I doing serious programs?
No, I said I travel through space and time. I don't visit Fantasy Island.
You're the Doctor.
You're absolutely right. I heard it was thick. I thought they were talking about his waist.
As they sit down to watch an episode of Doctor Who. Now, you might be quick to point out that this doesn't count, because it technically takes place outside of the episode. This is actually Jon Pertwee. Well, I'm saying otherwise. Firstly, because the Doctor remains in character. Hartnell's first Doctor broke the fourth wall a long time ago already.
Incidentally, a happy Christmas to all of you at home.
And we recently had the 14th Doctor break the fourth wall in The Devil's God. So that's nothing new. And I fail to see how this setup is any different to Trial of the Time Lord, so I'm declaring these scenes canon. Why I'm telling you all this? Because it shows a Time Lord can break the fourth wall, like Mrs. Flood keeps doing. They begin watching the episode, in 3D I might add, where the Rani has marinated the first 2 Doctors' heads in time.
Pickled in time, like gherkins in a jar.
Right off the bat, it is super obvious. The Rani is somewhat hell-bent on making the Doctor suffer. She has an elaborate scheme to trap the Doctor in Albert Square, with the cast of EastEnders. You can't make this stuff up. But not just the Doctor, but their companions as well. The Rani's obsession with the companions continues. The Doctor keeps slipping between regenerations as his companions continuously change.
What's happening?
Change!
Look, there's Mel.
What year is this? Oh, don't you start. There's enough oddballs around here as it is.
Madam, what year is this?
She's in 2 stories with the Rani now, for now. To complicate matters further, here is Susan with the 6th Doctor.
Who are you?
Precisely. I am the Doctor.
Oh, no, you're not. You're nothing like my grandfather.
Can't wait for RTD not to address this if Susan is brought back, despite RTD recently confirming the story as canon in Tales of the TARDIS, a series of which also mentions the Rani. But that is a different can of worms. Eventually, the Rani comes down to confront the Doctor herself, but where does she stand? Outside the Queen Vic. You know who used to be the landlady of the Queen Vic? Angie Watts. You know who played Angie Watts? Anita Dobson. Do you know who Anita Dobson plays? That's right, Mrs. Flood. You know, Anita Dobson actually sang a song to the theme tune of EastEnders, and you know what position it reached on the UK Top 40? Number 4. The episode eventually ends with the Doctor trapping the Rani in a time trap, which undoubtedly I'm sure she could escape, and this is the last time we see her. Yeah, we're going to ignore the audio adventures, because I don't think RTD would have taken them into consideration when writing Mrs. Flood. Also, I haven't listened to them. I think it's safe to say the internet might not be crazy this time. I think there is a chance that Mrs. Flood isn't the Abzorbaloff, isn't the Valeyard, isn't Robbie Rotten, but is in fact the Rani. Or maybe Mrs. Flood was actually the friends we made along the way. Goodbye.
Remember, blessed are the pie makers, for they shall make light pastry.